So then you got into PayPal and writing React at PayPal. I assume you were working on the front end, and this was the end of 2015, you said?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Right at the end of 2015, like December 2015, it lasts just a couple weeks before the end of the year. And so then I'm, doing all front end React at PayPal. I worked on the transfer product, and so like if you want to send money to a friend, then you're using the product I worked on. And I started on the cross border. So if it was a cross border, so like country to country, then that was my primary product. And a couple of cool things came out of that. I built Glamorous while I was there. That was the CSS and JS React library based on Glamour, inspired by styled components, and then evolved into Emotion. And then I also built Downshift, which is an enhanced autocomplete or type ahead, enhanced input type component. That I actually still use that. It's in Epic React. I teach people how to do some performance tuning and stuff with it as part of Epic React. I feel like there were a couple other things, but I also worked on some infrastructure related stuff at PayPal that they're still using to this day.
Really?
I left in 2019, so they're still using stuff I built. I started the component library that they use over there as well. I had a really good 3 years over there at PayPal.
That's awesome. I also know that you had history representing PayPal at TC39. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was awesome. I was so thrilled to be invited to be a part of that. So for those who don't know, the TC39 is the standards committee for standardizing JavaScript, which is technically called ECMAScript for stupid reasons. So I would go once every quarter to somewhere in the world. I never went international. It was always like New York or Bay Area or something like that. And we would have like a 2 or 3 day meeting. I think it was just 2 days. Where you get a bunch of nerds in the room and talk about a language. I never championed any proposals or made any presentations. I was note taking and also representing people learning JavaScript as the educator. And so, I feel I like to say that I actually did make some pretty good contributions, but I can't point to anything in particular that I changed. But just helping to guide that conversation from the perspective of people learning JavaScript. But I was a part of the TC39 for a couple of years, and it was pretty cool. Like I sat next to people who have been working on JavaScript for a long time. In fact, Brandon Ike was at several of those meetings, and he and I just sat next to each other and talked about JavaScript. It was pretty fun.
That's awesome. And I think that's really important too, because people who have been immersed in any language for a while, they can kind of lose their grounding because they already know it. They're like, okay, well, obviously this. So I think that's helpful that you kind of grounded them in well, what if someone doesn't know about this certain component? What are they going to do then? And it kind of just makes it be like, oh, well, interesting. I guess so. So that's super cool.
Unfortunately, I was too late to influence the imports for modules. So we say import such and such from module name, and it should be import or from module name import such and such, because that would help your autocomplete so much better.
Right.
And so. Yeah, that's a pain that we're going to deal with for the rest of our lives. But I always regret that. If I joined a year earlier, probably could have made a little bit of a move on that. But
that would have drastically changed how. I mean, even with AI, how it would have sort of been trained, because it's always would have gotten the primary package rather than the dependency. That's interesting. So speaking of those different projects that you've worked on, one of your projects is React testing library, right?
Yeah, I developed that while I was at PayPal as well.
Why'd you create that? What was the sort of reasoning of why you created it? And then what is it used for? Because I've heard about it a little bit, but I haven't personally used it. So I'm interested just personally, what is it used for?
Yeah. Okay. So, some backstory. I've been teaching since like before I graduated college. It's just been a big part of everything that I do. And so, uh, when I was working full time for a company, I would teach in the evenings, and or like I'd prepare my material, record the videos, all of that in the evenings. But then I would also at PayPal, I would go like once every quarter to the office, and I would just host a workshop for anybody who wants to show up. We're going to do a workshop, and so I got into testing and started delivering a bunch of workshops on testing while I was at PayPal. And at the time, Enzyme was the way that you test React components. And it didn't take me very long to realize that I really didn't like Enzyme. There are just a lot of big problems with the way that they test stuff. And I developed all of these opinions from just experience in testing that just really made me say, no, Enzyme is not the way we do this. And so typically, the way I like to teach something to a total beginner is say, like, let's build our own version of this abstraction first, and then we can go in and learn how to use the abstraction. And so I'm building up to get to Enzyme, where we just like literally create a DOM node and then render your React component to that DOM node and then interact with that thing. And I turn that into a little render function. And so you pass your React component to that render function. It'll put it in the DOM, and now you can interact with it. And then jumping from that to what Enzyme is was like just a massive jump, because Enzyme just does way, way more. And I was going to write this big list of here are all the things you don't do when you're using Enzyme, because like these are really bad for your tests. And like accessing internal state and calling props and different stuff like that. So really, really bad practices. So I decided, you know what, this render function that I wrote is actually not all that bad. What if I just like not teach Enzyme and just teach this?
Let me just teach my own stuff that's better because I know actually what people are looking for. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And so eventually, like, that render function was bigger than what I would want people to copy and paste into their projects. And so I turned it into a library. And I was coming up with a name for it, and I posted to X. It was Twitter at the time, I guess. When I thought of the name for the library, I said, I just figured out the name for my React testing library. And Ryan Florence replied, and he was like, what is it, React testing library? And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so perfect. I'm going to call it that. It was going to be the React testing assistant is what I was going to call it. Yeah, I think I was going to name it RTA or something. But yeah, RTL,
That's
React
too
testing
funny.
library. It was perfect.
Oh,
so
boy.
I have mixed feelings about that name now, but yeah, it stuck. So I released this library. 2 weeks later, I'm at Trulia in San Francisco, teaching a workshop to 60 developers. And I'm like, here's this new library I just made, and I'm going to teach you how to use it. And I'm like, I sure hope this works out, because you're all going to be really mad if it doesn't. But yeah, it did. It did. And now it's the de facto standard for testing, not just React, but all UI on the web. And it's actually transcended the library. So it's been built into Playwright. They re-implemented testing library. So you're using Playwright, all like those queries, they came from testing library. And I consulted them on that. I wanted that to happen. And so it's way, way easier to query around the DOM now. And it encourages accessibility, because you're querying by role and by accessible label. And so if you can't query it, then a blind user can't find it either.
Exactly.
And so like it just makes your application more accessible. And then it also has been re-implemented by the vtest team. And so that is now built into vtest if you're using browser mode. And this is just phenomenal. It's like the best thing I could have hoped for. That it's like I haven't maintained it in years. Like I handed it off to a team of really competent, awesome developers, and they're maintaining it now. It's still like by far the most widely used testing library for the web of anything. But yeah, it's I guess to be clear, it's a collection of utilities for rendering UI to the DOM and then querying that UI and even interacting with it with firing different events, DOM events on that UI. It does not give you access to any of the internals of the components. In fact, it doesn't even really know that there are components. It just renders to the DOM, and then you interact with the DOM. And so yeah, that is where testing library came from.
Awesome. That made quite an impact on the web ecosystem.